Namaste everyone. This is the reading passage. Just like Bernard Shaw by James Herriot. James Herriot is the writer and also the veterinary doctor. He was born in 1916. So in this short video, I will be talking about this text. The text is taken from BBS second year course, and it is from the third chapter, Science and Environment, and it is the second last text of the third chapter, just like George Bernard Shaw. The writer, let's talk about the writer first. James Herriot, who attended a veterinary college and established a practice in England. He published his first animal book, All Creatures, Great and Small, 1972, the first account of his early days as a veterinarian when he was over 50. The book and its successors, All Things Bright and Beautiful, it was published in 1974. All Things Wise and Wonderful, it was published in 1977. And The Lord God Made Them All, 1981, have sold over 10 million copies worldwide. So Herriot's love of animals, his quiet sense of humor, and his keen appreciation for the colorful neighbors who enliven his memoirs have made his book popular with readers everywhere. Just like Bernard Shaw is the 23rd chapter of The Lord God Made Them All, 1981. In this anecdote means it is all about own personal life event or life experience. So anecdote means a short story taken from own story on own life. And in this anecdote, proving that the events that inspire a good story don't have to be earth-shaking. For the good story, for inspiring others, it is not necessary to have earth-breaking, a very important topic. The small event can also inspire the readers. The veterinarian describes one family reaction to the news that writer Bernard Shaw has suffered a mishap. Mishap means, accident. The story uses medical knowledge to illuminate or illumine an interesting human situation, in fact. So in this passage, from The Lord God Made Them All, James Herriot is from the UK, Yorkshire, UK, England, and a veterinarian and writer describes a day when he would have been wise to remain silent. So this is really interesting story. What happens in the story is that his hero, his source of inspiration, George Bernard Shaw, broke his leg while pruning apple trees in his garden. And as a veterinarian, he went to the house of one client to treat the broken leg of a cow. And at that time, he remembers George Bernard Shaw, about whom many media had published the news everywhere. The story goes, it's a very simple story, goes like this way. It was in 1950 that one of my heroes, George Bernard Shaw, broke his leg while pruning apple trees in his garden. I was shocked when I read about the calamity, and there was no doubt the national press shared my feelings. For weeks, bulletins were published for the benefit of an anxious public. It was right that this should be, and I agreed with all the phrases that rolled off the journalist typewriters. Literary genius, inspired musical critique who sailed fearlessly against the tide of public opinion, must reward playwright of our age. So like these phrases were published, and it was just about then that the castling's calf broke its leg too, and I was called to see it. The castling farm was one of a group of homesteads set high on a heathery Yorkshire moors. They were isolated places and often difficult to find. The casting place was perched on the moor top with a fine disregard for the elements. The only concession was a clump of hardy trees that had been planted to the west of the farm to give shelter from the prevailing wind. Mr. Castling and his two big sons slouched towards me as I got out of the car. The farmer was the sort of man who would expect to find a place like this. His 60 years old face purpled and roughened by the weather, white bony shoulders pushing against the raised material of his jacket. His sons, Alan and Harold, were in their 30s and resembled their father in almost every detail, even to the way they walked. Hands deep in pockets, heads thrust forward, heavy boots trailing over the cobbles. Also, they didn't smile. They were good chaps, all of them, in fact, a nice family, but they weren't smilers. Now, Mr. Herriot, Mr. Castle peered at me under the frayed peak of his cap and came to the point without preamble. Calves interfelled. We set off through a gate with two strange little sheepdogs slinking at our heels, and the wind met us with a savage joy, swirling over the rolling bare miles of that high plateau. About a score of calves were running with their mothers on a long rectangle of green court from the surrounding heather. At a few barked commands from Mr. Castling, the dogs darted among the cattle, snapping at heels, baring their teeth at defiant horns till they had singled out cow and calf. They stood guard then till the young men rushed in and bore the little animal to the ground. My patient was expertly immobilized, held flat on the sparse turf by Harold at the head, Alan at the tail, and their father in the middle. As I dipped my plaster bandages in water and began to apply them to the fracture, I noticed that our heads were very close together. It was a very small calf, about a month old, and at times the three human faces were almost in contact, and yet nobody spoke. Veterinary work passes blithely by when there is a good conversation, and it is a positive delight when you are lucky enough to have one of those day Yorkshire raconteurs among your helpers. At times, I have had to lay down my scalpel and laugh my fill before I was able to continue. But here all was silence. I began to feel embarrassed. With all my heart, I wished somebody would say something. Then, like a glorious flash of inspiration, I remembered the recent clamor in the newspaper. Just like Bernard Shaw, yeah? I said with a light laugh. The silence remained impenetrable, and for about half a minute, it seemed that I was going to receive no reply. Then Mr. Castling cleared his throat. Oh, he inquired. Bernard Shaw, George Bernard Shaw, you know, he's broken his leg too. I was trying not to gabble. The silence descended again, and I had a strong feeling that I had better leave it that way. Now I got on with my job, dousing the white cast with the water and smoothing it over. It was Harold who came in next. Does live about here? No, no, not really. I decided to put on one more layer of bandage, wishing fervently that I had never started this topic. I was tipping the bandage from the tin when Alan chipped in. Doubly fair, he said. Things were becoming more difficult. No, I replied early. I believe he spends most of his time in London. London? The conversation, such as it was, had been carried on without any movement of the heads, but now the three faces jerked up towards me with undisguised astonishment, and three voices spoke as one. After the initial shock had worn off, the men looked down at the calf again, and I was hoping that the subject was dead when Mr. Castling muttered from the corner of his mouth, "He won't be in farming line then." Well, no, he rides plays. I could see by the fleeting side glances that I was in deep enough already. "We'll just give the plaster time to try," I said. I sat back on the springy turf as the silence descended again. After a few minutes, I tapped finger along the length of the white cast. It was hard. It was as hard as stone, right? You can let him go now. I'll take it off in a month, I said. But there was no further talk as we made our way over the field towards the gate. Still, I knew very well that what the remarks would be over the farmhouse dinner table. "Queer lad, that veterinary kept on about some friend of his in London broke his leg." I kept on just like the man of us. Queer lad. And my last feeling as I drove away was just that all fame is relative, but that I would take care in the future not to start talking about somebody who doesn't live about there. So this is the end of the story. There are some words and vocabulary exercises, and you can practice over here like this way. This is all. This is a very, small event of Herriot, who went to treat the broken leg of calf. At the same time, his inspirational hero George Bernard Shaw's leg was also broken, and he was comparing. He was just talking about that to make fun with the Castling, but the Castling family was very silent. So this is the end of the story. Thank you very much, everyone. It's all.